Hey guys, welcome to the Dragon's Voice podcast. I am your host, Truly Reece Deans, and before we get down to the nitty gritty of episode 50 with David Phillips, who has been a tremendous guest, and it's very special to have him on the show, considering he's played for Wales, where he's earned 62 caps. He's won the FA Cup with Coventry. He's played for Frank Clark's Nottingham Forest just after Brian Clough had left the club. He's got a lot of stories to tell, and he's got so much to say as well, and I made sure I get all the questions that I needed and what some of you guys wanted to hear out there for him to answer. But I just wanted to say a big thank you for supporting me, and especially how far we've come. And we haven't even got to the 1 year anniversary yet of the Dragon's Voice, and already we've got 50 episodes, and it's hard work and it's been paying off. But I'm really glad, and I'm looking forward to getting down to the next 50 episodes as well. And hopefully maybe with the 100th episode we can get Chris Gunter in for being the first 100th cap men's senior player to get the 100 caps. So that's going to be interesting. But in the meantime, I was going to say thank you so much for the support and enjoy the podcast. Hey guys, this podcast is brought to you by Sacco Sportswear. Sacco Sportswear is a local business based in Barry, and they produce the sportswear and training gear that you may need. Their stocks include tracksuits, hoodies, t-shirts, socks, and so much more. If you're a local team or even a local football club that wants to provide the best kit for their team to play in, then Sacco Sportswear is the business to turn to. Even if you're not into football, but are into other sports, Sacco Sportswear also provides you with the best gear when you go to the boxing gyms, or even play rugby, tennis, and so much more. They don't just do training gear or any outfits at all, and if you're just looking for something to wear in general, then they also provide the leisure outfits as well. And want to inquire, then get in contact via social media. If you want to look them up on Facebook, just type in Sacco Sportswear. On Twitter, it's at Sacco Sportswear, no capitals and no gaps at all. Or even on Instagram, same again, Sacco Sportswear with no gaps. Or even then, if you want to send them an email, it's at saccosportswear@gmail.com. They won't disappoint you, so get in touch. Sacco Sportswear on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or you can email again on saccosportswear@gmail.com. Hey guys, welcome to the Dragon's Voice podcast. I hope you guys are keeping well as I am, and hope you guys are keeping yourself busy. And I just want to say very, very quickly, thanks to our sponsor, Sacco Sportswear. It's mad that we got a sponsor. It's completely bonkers how far we've come. It hasn't even been a year yet, and this podcast is going somewhere. Don't know where. It probably goes somewhere without me, for all I know. But anyway, but I gotta carry on, and the guests that are flying in, and it's absolute honor that I've got someone in the room right now, an FA Cup winner who's played for Nottingham Forest, played for Coventry. He's played with some of the biggest names in football, and he's also made 62 caps, earned 62 caps for Wales. And I really want to know how he got those 62 caps anyway. It's none other than David Phillips. David, how's it going?
Yeah, bore da.
Bore da.
Yes, all good for me, thank you. Obviously, now we're coming out of lockdown. It makes life a lot easier for everyone concerned. I'm now going back to coaching back at the academy where I'm working, which is a local one associated with Racing Club Warwick, and getting to see the boys, mix with them, go through all patterns of play. But obviously the season now is coming to an end, so it's a little bit disappointing for them, really, to be honest with you, to have that experience with us. Because some of them are leaving us this year, but we still got others coming in for next year. We've just had trials for the first years, so exciting times ahead. But great to be out of lockdown, to be able to do a little bit more. But obviously, holidays, theatres, all those sort of things, which I love doing, still yet to be opened up.
You know what? You're a theatre lover, are you? Because I'm a big theatre lover as well. Because I'm a playwright as well at the same time.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I would say we've had to rebook a lot of theatre, to be honest with you. We can go from Priscilla to Mamma Mia to Honestly, there's lots of stuff that we've had to redo, the same as everyone else, to be honest with you. We've had to revisit my wife's 50th birthday for maybe the second year. So Pretty Woman is the one that we've been looking at for some time. It's the fourth time now we've had to rebook. It's gone from the Piccadilly to the Savoy. So we've got that sorted out. We've got Carousel at Regent's Park coming up, which is, I don't know if you've been to Regent's Park with the open air theatre. Fabulous destination, in amongst like a load of trees, etc. Beautiful, but yeah, I'm a big theatre goer.
Yeah, I've been studying and doing a lot of theatre. I mean, I got a degree in script writing for one of my universities, and I did an MA in drama. So it all started in GCSEs for me. It was just a never-ending journey, and they all said to me, "So why football?" I went, "Well, it's always a hobby. It's a lovely hobby, But I think one of the things that we need to talk about with you, if we get down to it, I've got a bit of a soft spot for Plymouth. I don't know why. It is a weird. My family's just weird. It's like my bouncer was a Nottingham Forest fan. I got a bit of a soft spot for Plymouth. But you started your career with Plymouth, and obviously I'm going to be asking you how'd you start your career with Plymouth. But also I want to talk about that 1984 FA Cup run at the same time. So it's probably a double bill question. So how did you start the career with Plymouth, and also? Could you tell us about that 1984 FA Cup run that you were part of?
Yeah, I'm saying, if I go prior to that, people still look at my statistics and whatever, and still to this day, Reece, there's a lot of people who say, well, you were born in Germany, how did you come to play for Wales? My father was based in Germany. He was in the Royal Air Force, and they were based over there at that given time. I was born on British soil back in those days, and still to this day, that if you're born abroad, invariably, if it would be an army camp or a Royal Air Force camp, they were deemed as being British soil. Jeremy Goss, for example, teammate of mine at Norwich City, he was born in Cyprus. People always ask me, could you have played for Germany? The answer is no. Absolutely not, because I had a British passport, but British certification. So really, I could have played for England as well, but no, that was never going to happen. Yeah. We moved to Bridgend, and also St Athan. I was brought up in Wales, and my first love was rugby. And if you ever see my fact file, when it comes to Plymouth, my favourite ever player was Steve Fenwick, who was a centre of Bridgend, also Wales, and also the British Lions. And obviously my favourite team was Bridgend RFC. It wasn't a football team. But when we moved from Wales, we moved to Holland for 3 years. And that's really where I started playing football with a local club called KVC Aranya, who were a junior club of a club called Roda JC Kerkrade. They produced some World Cup players. Dick Naninga scored in the 78 World Cup final coming off the bench. Jan Youngblood was the goalkeeper. Dick Advocar, I used to go and see Dick Advocar when I was a child, notorious manager. And then we moved down to Cornwall, and I played for a side called Weybridge. We moved to Truro, and things started to develop from there. And getting into Plymouth Argyle was a great experience for me. I did have a choice of playing rugby or playing football. Had all the major clubs in the southwest chasing me, but there was no money in rugby at the time, so I chose football, and I was one of the last apprentices to be chosen for Plymouth Argyle. But yeah, as you're right to say, it all started down at Plymouth. I signed a professional contract with Plymouth, and as you're right to say, 1984 was one heck of a year, not just for Plymouth Argyle, but for me in general. Reaching the semi-final of the FA Cup, which was unknown to a third division side at that time. I was also getting married. I was also being chased by Manchester City to sign for them. And also 1984, I made my Wales debut against England at the racecourse. So, 1984 is certainly a huge year for me.
In 1984, was that the one where, because it was that famous win, wasn't it, for Wales against England? But I can't, because a lot of people say, because Wales played a lot of games around that period against England at the racecourse and everything. They always say, "Oh, it was a 1-0. Was it the 1-0 win, or was it the 4-1 win, or was it what was that game for you in the opening?"
It was the one. It was the 1-0 win. Mike England was the manager, and we used to stay at Llangollen at Bryn Howell Hotel, and he said to me that I was going to make my debut against England, and for somebody to make their debut, playing for Wales is first and foremost the best thing that I've ever wanted to do or wanted ever to do. I did play for Wales at youth team level. I made my debut when I was a 17-year-old as an under 18 and came up through the ranks. And it was also nice to see that coming through the ranks and also making his debut that day, who also scored the winner against England, was Mark Hughes. So we made our debuts together at the racecourse, and it was a fabulous day.
It's amazing how so many talented Welsh players you've played alongside with. I mean, the list could go. I mean, I think I've written a list. I think I made a list of some of the names. You got the likes of Ian Rush, Kevin Ratcliffe. There was Gary Speed. I think I mentioned Neville Southall, Ryan Giggs. It was Peter Nicholas, Barry Horn, Mark Hughes, Joey Jones. The list goes on. I mean, and you played with some of the most prolific Welsh stars, to come out of football. So what was it like to be around, a load of those guys, especially, some of them playing, for the big teams in the first division or whatever. So what was it like in the changing rooms to be around those guys?
When you like with the youth team, with the under 18s, and then you move up to the 21s always go with the main squad. So you get to know the older players. They're not necessarily older than you, but you travelled with the main squad. So, for example, we went to Yugoslavia. The under 21s went to Titograd, and we got a result there. It was -5, -10. There were no showers. We had an hour and a half's journey across the mountains, and so we used to replicate everything that the main squad used to do. And I still remember that day when they played Yugoslavia, because it ended up being a 4-4 draw. Joey Jones scoring. There was Brian Flynn. I'm saying people that I still remember really, really fondly. People had a big effect with me. People like Robbie James. We know that he passed away some years ago. A big influence on me. Brian Flynn, another one. But then the younger sort of players, the Kevin Ratcliffes, Neville Southall, people like that were just phenomenal to be around. Obviously, they were big hitters back in those days because they were at Everton. I was at Plymouth Argyle when I first made my debut for Wales, and then obviously moved on to Manchester City. So I did move to a big club from Plymouth, but being around those guys was just unbelievable. And people like Joey Jones and Mickey Thomas were just like a comedy duo. And you go down to lunch times or evening meals, and they were just a laugh. They could have been on the circuit. They were phenomenal to be around. But there were some fantastic characters, and those are moments I really treasure.
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of moments, for you. I'll stick to Wales for the time being before I go on to Man City and or the clubs you played for. But you've been part of some of famous or infamous moments for Wales. I mean, I can say, there were games, I've written down in my notes that it was 1988 European Championship 1-0 win against Italy. That I don't know why there was a big capitals 1-0 win Italy in my notes. But there was obviously it was that Scotland game at Nottingham Park where Jock Stein was managing the team, and unfortunately it happened to be his last, not just last game as for Scotland manager, but last day on earth. I mean, I don't want to make the slum because we were having a good time talking about it, but I just want to know, because you're part of that squad then, was you were playing, I imagine, at the game as well, and what was the what was the reaction when everyone found out that Jock Stein had a heart attack and passed away?
Yeah, well, I'll say first and foremost, Reece, let's cut to the point. It was my handball which basically gave Scotland the win to start off with. We had an East German referee, a person who hit the shot to start off with, which was going about 10 yards too high. I had my hand raised above my head. But as I said, the shot was going miles high and wide. It was David Speedy. David Speedy ended up becoming a teammate of mine at Coventry. It was a moment for me, which is one of those that I try to ignore, but I don't ignore because it's part of my life. It's part of my bringing up about how mentally strong I can be after a situation like that to start off with. But that day was always remembered for the unfortunate death of Jock Stein, who is an absolute legend, Scottish legend. And to see that happening and to have those events surrounding that game, which was a huge game, just really put a dampener on everything, not only just for Wales, because getting close to qualification, but also for Scotland as well. He was a renowned legend, as a right to say, and for a tragic event to happen like that, just was untrue. There was also another tragedy that we had, and also another time was when we played Romania in Cardiff again, where we got close to the World Cup finals. And people always remember and always say about the Paul Bowden incident, hitting the crossbar, and should somebody else have taken it? Well, Bodds was the penalty taker, and I'll never ever have a pop at Bodds for that. At the end of the day, he was strong, he was courageous, he wanted to do it. But also on that day, Reece, somebody died because a flare went from one side of the stadium to another, hit somebody, a spectator, and they died. So a couple of tragic events happened around games where they were vital for us. But going back to the Scotland game, it was a game really that we needed to win. Unfortunately, the situation happened and developed around myself. It was also very strange that for some reason they decided to lengthen the pitch by about a yard or 2 yards, and the penalty came in, and it basically hit the line where the goal line was going to be, and then went over Neville Southall's hand. Was like, I think if the goal would have been another yard closer, it might have made a bit of a difference. But irrespective, that is life, and that is history, that is in the annals of in football. But we still have to remember what happened that night, and that was the tragic event surrounding Jock Stein.
Going on to just very briefly then about the managers of Wales. I mean, a lot of people speak highly of Terry Yorath and Mike England, and obviously you got the likes of Chris Coleman and Gary Speed always being in today's, culture or Welsh football culture, let's just say, that they are that highly praised managers for the ones to get Wales where they are now. And obviously Ryan Giggs is at the helm, or briefly. But for you, it was Mike England and Terry Yorath, and they're still talked about to this day because the finest managers, to have. So because you played under both of them, and I think you played alongside with Terry Yorath. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what was it like to have Mike England and Terry Yorath as manager, and what was the difference between those two individuals as well?
I'm going to say, first and foremost, I'd never played with Terry Yorath. Having said that, that's fine, that's not a problem. But I will say that when I moved to Huddersfield towards the back end of my career with Barry Horn, Terry used to join in with the five-a-sides. Now, the situation regarding Terry Yorath is the first ever British game that I ever saw was Bristol City versus Coventry City down at Ashton Gate. And I always remember this player with blonde locks running around, hitting people, passing the ball really well, getting himself stuck in. And that was Terry Yorath. Straight away, I had an affinity, A, with Coventry, and B, with Terry Yorath. And I was obviously very, very proud when Terry became manager of Wales. But if we roll reverse and we go back a little bit further and say about Mike England was such a lovely guy. I don't think you can have anyone in this world who would say a bad word against Mike England. He was honest, he was generous. The way that he spoke to you made you feel really special. I still remember when we were at the Bryn Howell Hotel that, I didn't really have a great car back in those days. I was only, a youngster. And I remember the boys decided they wanted to have a car race in the grounds, in the car park. And I don't know, a couple of hours later, we had a meeting, and Mike England came up and he just said, look, I'm so disappointed to hear what has happened earlier today about you guys having a race in the car park. And of course, we all felt a little bit low. And he said, you could have invited me. I've got the XR4i. He said, I've beaten all of you, So he was like that. And the way that they went about their business was just absolutely superb, thoroughly professional. It's been quite some time since I've seen Mike, and I can only have fond words to be spoken about him. Terry Yorath, you knew what you had with Terry Yorath. Sometimes there was no airs and graces. And, again, I highly respect, the way that him and Peter Shreve held us in good stead. Again, stories surrounding those guys. We stayed at Newport, just on the Caldra roundabout. And I remember coming down to training one morning and the two of them having an argument. And they were both saying, look, no, it's 12:30. No, it's 1 o'clock. He said, no, it's 12:30. No, it's 1 o'clock. So we're all thinking, well, what on earth's going on there? So anyway, I think Shrevesy went off to have a look at something. He came back. He said, it's 12:30, Terry. He says, right, okay. Guys, training's cancelled. We'll catch you later. He said, do whatever you want today. They were off to a horse race meeting. So so they just turned around and said, so we ended up going golfing at over at Saint Pierre in Chepstow, and they went off to the horse racing and came back. So that's what they were like. But they were really, really good in respect of how they managed things. They gave us a little bit of time. I remember one of the first times that Terry took over as Welsh team manager, and I think we got beat in Sweden or whatever, and he had a meeting with some of the senior pros and just said, look, what is happening? Why are we performing like this? He said, well, you did make a rule that we couldn't go out. So, well, what do you mean? I can't, not letting you guys go out. He said, well, yeah. So after that, Terry allowed us to go out into Cardiff as long as we were fit and able to train. And so some boys are coming in at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. And he allowed us to, have that sense of being able to go out, not being stupid, to be able to train. And it happened until he turned around and says, right, after Sunday afternoon, that is it, finished. You now really focus on what is ahead, which will be the game on Wednesday. So he started to give us a little bit of a leeway, and it had its effect. So he, by just asking the senior pros, a bit of good man management, we started getting results, etc. And Terry was a great guy, still is a great guy, still lives up at Leeds. And as I said, I had another good year with him when I was at Huddersfield with Barry Horn. And again, he's a man I highly, highly respect.
One of the things I remember asking Dylan Ebenezer, who's the Scottish presenter, because he interviewed Mike England, I thought, oh, it'd be great. And Dylan said to me, it was a struggle for them because of how old Mike is and everything. He said, oh, the memories are not as strong for him. And I thought, oh, fair enough. But I remember speaking to some of the young guys and just saying, oh, I loved, because the top 5 people I love to interview was like, oh, Mike England. And then I just went, even if it was just like a brief chat, that would have been it for me, because of what he'd done. And they were sick, and he's in the top 5 Wales managers, so fair play. And I wanted to ask you very quickly about Terry Yorath. Do you think that he would have had that potential to take Wales further after that Romania game? Do you think that he would have given Wales that bit of boost to probably get to the next maybe European Championship or the next World Cup tournament?
Yeah, I think so. I was very shocked that all that surrounding Terry happened, because of getting so close. We had a very young Ryan Giggs in the squad at the time as well. We still had good players, as I say, good players. You know, they were like a mature age. You know, we were basically around 29, 30 years of age. Yes, Rats might be 32. Neville, you know, but they were players who were played at the top of their game. You know, people like Dean Saunders was there as well. You know, we had good players. And when I found out that you know, Terry has been relieved of his duties, I was really surprised. I think Mike Smith came in then, didn't he?
Yeah.
Was that right? Now that's another story, because when they relieved Mike, with Terry of his duties, Mike Smith started to sit in with the council meetings, and Alan Evans was the secretary, and they were going through people who they wanted to see if they could become the next Wales manager, and they couldn't between them decide who they wanted. And then I'm led to believe through Brian Fear, who was one of the committee members, that they said to Mike Smith, "Oh, Mike, do you fancy having a go?" And Mike's gone, "Well, yeah, okay." So on that basis, Mike Smith became the next manager of the Wales by sitting in to try and find out who they should bring in. And I thought that was really strange that they brought him in when they had somebody like Terry Yorath, who was a very experienced. Listen, Mike Smith was a very experienced manager as well, but he'd been out of the game for quite some time. And I thought maybe, you know, with Terry and also with Peter Shreves, they should have continued.
And I think briefly as well, I don't know if it was after Mike Smith, but John Toshak was in the mix as well. He only did that one game.
Yeah, that was interesting as well. That was Norway down at Cardiff, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a 3-0 loss, or a 3-1 loss.
Yeah, well, listen, Tosh. You know, I go back to my days when I was at KBC Aranya, and I used to go and watch Roda JC Kukrada play, and they actually played a pre-season game against Liverpool. And you know, I was a kid amongst you know, quite a few of us who used to go down and cycle a lot, as you do in Holland, and you know, we hadn't got a clue what time Liverpool were coming to the stadium and etc. And we rode down there 3 or 4 times, and it wasn't that far. You know, it was only about 3-4 miles there and back. And then we went to the game, and I asked Tosh as he was coming through the tunnel, could I have his autograph, and he said no. So he just like waved me away, and I was a kid at that time. I was 11-12 years of age, and that had a huge impact on me. When he became the manager of Wales for that short period, he came to the Celtic Manor, and I still remember him coming into the room and going, "Right, Nev, right, Rats, hi, Sparky, as for the rest of you, I don't know who you are." And I was like, "Done your homework then, have you?" You know, so straight away he put a lot of players on their back feet, and you know, losing that game to Norway, and then him deciding that, nah, this isn't for me, I wasn't overly surprised. So it was a little bit of a shock, really, you know, with Tosh coming in for that short period of time. But, you know, there was a little bit of an impact, and a little bit of like, you know, I can remember when I was 11-12 years of age, you waving me away. And now that happening as well. But, you know, I got to know Tosh, you know, later on, and, you know, no airs and graces.
You know, I'll tell you a funny story very quickly then. The Swansea 11s came down to Barrytown for a friendly, and simple, nice little summer day, you know, nice day for football. We were there, and there was rumours going around that John Toshak was on the other side of the Jenner Park, and me being John Toshak, that'd be great to meet him, and I all I wanted was a photograph. So I asked my mate Morgan, right, come with me, right? And he's younger than me, and he went, "Oh, who's John Toshak?" I went, "Shush, boy! Now that's blasphemy there." And we ran around the running track, and he was there, you know, big Tosh walking past, and I said, "Oh, sorry to bother you. Can I have a picture?" You went, "Yeah, but can you help me out for a minute?" He went, "Yeah, come with me." I went, "All right then." So we went out of the ground, past the clubhouse, into the main car park area, and of course he had his big, I think it was the big Range Rover, right? And it was literally covered in cars, and I'm thinking, how the hell is he gonna get out of this? And he literally went, right, can you just direct me to get out of this car park? And I don't even drive. I don't even know myself. And I'm there going, right, here we go. I was like, yeah, go on, back it up, Tosh, back it up, back it up. And he's doing his things. And luckily, I didn't force him to scratch his car or anything. And he managed to get out. And fair play to me, got out of the car, went, come on then, and took a picture. But I just never forget how, I mean, even though he's in his early 70s, how big he is.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, Christ almighty, that you are, no wonder why they called you Big Tosh, you know. But fair play to him, honestly. Going on to quick, Man City, you know, you've had the FA Cup run with Plymouth. It was pretty successful, especially for a club like Plymouth at that time. You then signed for Man City, and it was the 1984-85 season where you gained automatic promotion. So you just you finished third. Obviously, Birmingham finished second. Oxford. I look at it and think Oxford top of the league. Well, but they were a pretty decent side back in the day. So what was that season like for you to get promotion? And I think and that was your first season as well with Man City to get promotion So what was that like for you?
Yeah. Firstly, moving from Plymouth to Manchester City was like, you know, moving from a village to a city, and it was. And you know, I've still got high regard of Plymouth Argyle, you know, the way that they developed me, etc. But the opportunity of moving to Manchester City was really a no-brainer. Plymouth Argyle wanted to make me the highest paid player in their club's history. That wasn't going to happen. You know, I wanted to move, and you know, when Billy McNeil came in for me, it was one of those that I settled in very, very quickly. And as you're right to say, that we gained promotion that first year. I became the Junior Blue Player of the Year. Scored a dozen goals. Some of them, you know, you'll still see on YouTube, etc., from like, you know, 25, 30, 35 yards. And people always remember the last game because I think we had to beat Charlton by 3. I scored very early on. Scored the 5th as well. You know, as we rampaged over, you know, the Charlton side. That day, there was over 50-odd thousand inside of Main Road. Statistically, I think there might have been more like 60-odd thousand. You know, there wasn't. You couldn't even see any seats. You couldn't see any runways or anything like that. It was just completely packed. So the first year at Manchester City was a fabulous one for myself. As I said, scoring some really, really important goals, some long-range goals, and getting promotion as well, which for a club of that size and magnitude, you know, that was imperative that they got promoted, and we did that.
You know what? I've noticed something. There's a pattern here that I've noticed for your career, is that every time you sign for a club, very first season, success comes in a way. It's like a pattern here. It's like, obviously with Man City, you know, the first season you get promotion. Your first season with Coventry, which I'll get onto in a moment, you win the FA Cup. And then, of course, with Norwich City doing success, you know, and obviously through Norwich, you get finishing third with in the Premier League, you know, which people today will think, Norwich third in the Premier League, you know. But a lot of success, and in Nottingham Forest as well, you know, 93-94 season, gained back promotion to the Premiership. So you've always been a key asset to the squad, and you bring a lot of good luck in the opening season for whatever club you go to. And I really want to go on to, so 1986, you signed for Coventry City, and here's another weird thing. My friend Ryan Cox, I'll shout out to you because he'll probably be watching this. It's not live, don't worry, but it's probably be watching this on YouTube, and he'll be going, "Oh, cheers, Reese. Big Coventry fan." I asked him, you know, if there was any question you wanted me to ask you, what would it be? And
well, I'll tell you what, Ryan's actually, you know, been in touch with me, and like, you know, I'm only joking, but yeah, great to hear from you, Ryan. But yes, go on, carry on, please.
No, it's right. But I said, look, is any question, you know, me to ask? And he said, I'll just ask about that FA Cup game. I thought, all right, no problem. I went, is there anything else you probably want to ask? And he went, nope. And I went, okay. So first season, Coventry City, the 1986-87 tournament, Coventry City reached the FA Cup final, Tottenham Hotspur. But at the same time, you got players such as, you know, Dave Bennett, Steve Ogrisovic, and also Cyril Regis. So I want to mention, before I mention the FA Cup game, I really want to know about these players, especially Cyril Regis, because, you know, a lot of players today always speak highly of him, and he had the, you know, the gift of gab and the playing for. So what was it like to play alongside with some of these names, especially Cyril Regis?
I say Cyril, it's a sad event that, he passed away, 2 to 3 years ago. Still could bring a tear to my eye now. Just a fit human being, such a lovely, lovely guy, but a colossus of a man. I can look at him here now, above me here, and you see his thighs. His thighs were bigger than some people's torsos. He was huge for a gentleman, but he was a gentleman. He was a team player, a real nice guy. I can't speak enough about Cyril Regis. Good player. He had a lot of pace, a lot of tenacity. He took a lot of stick, obviously, with the racism issues that we used to have back in the 80s. We still have it today, and it's still very, very poor, the way things are materializing. But back in the 80s, he had a lot of issues, bananas, and he even had a bullet sent to him in an envelope, saying, this one's for you. And the way he dealt with things, once he's finished playing football, became a scout, and also as an agent, and you'd see him there in his peak cap, and he was very down to earth, very softly spoken, loved his golf, loved his wife, and kids, and cousins, and all that, and he had a good family environment around him, and he was one of those players that you want with you, not against you. People like Steve Ogrizovic, great character. He still lives locally to where I am now. A lot of fond memories with Steve. Still remember the time when he scored, his one and only goal against Sheffield Wednesday at Hillsborough. He will tell you that he meant it, but I think it was the slope and also the big bounce that he had over, I think Kevin Pilkington was the goalkeeper. But again, he was a character. He liked his red wine, and we always used to joke of giving the UB40 song. But as soon as that came on, I've never liked it ever since. And Benno, again, was a great character. I remember the days when he was actually at Cardiff, and I was a youngster. I think I stayed at John Lewis's house. I always remember turning around and saying, well, who's that guy up there? He's got chains around his neck and here, there, and everywhere. He was with his brother Dave Bennett. He saw, that with Gary Bennett, sorry, and he said, those are the Bennetts. And it's like, footballers, and well, you could tell they were footballers, but great characters. And these are people that we still see nowadays, barring Cyril. We still get to meet up. Obviously, lockdown has been, not great for us. We generally meet up once every, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 weeks. So be people like, Dave Bennett, Steve Ogrizovic, Brian Burrows, Dean Emerson, Mickey Ginn. So we'd have quite a few of us, and then when the lads from North come down, like Nick Pickering and Keith Houchin, Houchy scored that fabulous goal in the FA Cup final. He was my roommate. Greg Downs, would come along as well. So there's a lot of players there who were good players. You'd say that apart from Cyril and myself, there weren't any other internationals. So that was the key. We had a good collection of players. We worked hard, we played hard. Tuesdays, John Sillett used to run us, and there was no footballs to be seen. And I always remember, down at the Connection, we would end up going into the sauna, and then just pop down the Blacksmiths for a few pints. And that's how it used to be. That's what it used to happen on a Tuesday. Go back home and then get a taxi into Coventry, into a couple of the nightclubs, and then get home. And then obviously, Wednesday off, generally play golf or whatever. But we were a collection of players who, as I said, we're all going out. It's not one or two going out, we're all going out. And, obviously it all worked, because the run that we had up to the FA Cup final, John and George Curtis, they really looked after us really, really well. but also, the respective wives, Jean and Inga, used to look after the wives as well. They used to take them out for meals, send them flowers, because sometimes George and John either they would take us down to Bournemouth to Fern down to the hotel down there, or sometimes we'd go over to Fuengirola for like a warm holiday camp. So they used to look after us, and that year was a phenomenal year.
What was your so the FA Cup final against Tottenham Hotspur? Like I said, I was talking to Ryan last night, and he said it's one of the best, or if not one of the greatest FA Cup finals that's ever played. And especially it's an underdog story for you guys, Coventry City, and because going up against Tottenham Hotspur, who's probably won multiple FA Cups in its history. So what was yours and the players' mindset going into the final, and especially going to play at Wembley in front of 80,000, 90,000 or even 100,000 people?
100,000.
And and a 3-2. I mean, it's such a tight game as well. 3-2. So what was it like for you and the players to go into that final?
Well, to be honest with you, Reece, we never felt ourselves as being underdogs.
Nope.
We'd already played Spurs during the campaign. I think we finished 10th in the season. They might finish 4th or 5th. We never felt that we were underdogs. You've got to take into account that during that cup run, we went to Stoke and beat Stoke. We went to Manchester United, beat Manchester United. George and John would always turn around and say our name was on the cup. And we had no issues about that. It was just a case of going out performing. Obviously, Sheffield Wednesday was another game. Leeds United in the semi-finals, another away game as such. Again, we came from behind there to win that game. But coming up against Spurs, when you had the people like, Glenn Hoddle, Ozzy Ardiles, people like that, Chris Waddle, Clive Allen, who'd scored 48 goals. Coming into that game, he scored his 49th quite quickly, but we never felt as that we were underdogs. So if I just backtrack slightly, people always think that footballers are all like have to really think about the game and really focus and concentrate, etc. The night before the FA Cup final, half a dozen of our boys were down the off license.
I can imagine that culture as well in the 80s as well.
And John and George saw them coming in with off license bags. A couple of them went down the pub in the local pub in Marlow. Houchy and I, we decided to stay in our room. We had a couple of beers in our room, just to relax, really. We got up in the morning, myself and Houchy. Houchy was a little bit more nervous. He went for a little jog, and then we ended up having a full English breakfast. But that day, we stayed at a beautiful hotel in Marlow. The Complete Angler, which is right on the river, and right opposite was a church, and there was a wedding going on that day as well, and it was an early wedding, and of course the boat comes across because they're going to have the reception over in our place, and Brian Kilcline had a little garland to put around the lady's thigh, etc. As a good luck charm for her, but also a good luck charm for us. And then we get into the coach and we're ready to go. And then John Sillett stops the coach because there's a magpie he can see. And he turned around to Dave, the coach driver, and said, "We're not moving until we see another magpie." So 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy. So until we saw the second magpie, we didn't move. When we saw the second magpie, we moved. So that was another, thing that was going to be in our way. And when we got to Wembley, going along Wembley Way, seeing the fans of Tottenham and also Coventry, I have to say, Reece, by the way, my wife is a Spurs fan.
Oh.
But, Fee and I didn't know each other back in those days. We've been together for 20 years. So she's a big Spurs fan, and, I've still got my medal here and this, that, whatever. But, I've got some international shirts, as you can see, dotted around. And, she's got Tim Sherwood's shirt, she's got Harry Kane's signed shirt, and she's got other bits and pieces. But back then, going along Wembley Way, seeing both sets of fans was just, phenomenal. And it gets like, goosebumps and everything. And then you go into the stadium, they lock the door behind you, that big door. And then you're in that big tunnel. And then you go around and have a look around the ground. We'd already been there before. I've played there before for Man City in the Simod Cup final. And then, the last bits and pieces from John Sillett was, let's go out there and enjoy ourselves. So we went out there and, met the dignitaries. The game started. We enjoyed ourselves for about 2 minutes because Clive Allen scored. And that was his 49th goal of the season. And considering that he played up front by himself, it was a phenomenal effort by Clive Allen. And we knew that we were going to be in for, a run. But, quickly and surely that we got back into the game, with Dave Bennett. We all remember Keith Houchin's fabulous goal. Again, another great ball from Dave Bennett. I can still now, be there in my position at right back, just jumping and saying to Keith, go on, dive for it. And he dives for it. And, the goal is history. Getting into extra time, both sets of players were obviously tired, but John and George were always turning around and saying like, we were the fittest people around, and maybe all those Tuesday mornings that we were having was having an effect because we felt fitter, we felt stronger, and yes, it was an unfortunate goal from Gary Mabbott off his knee, but sometimes that's how you win finals and win games, and to have that to win 3-2 at Wembley, as you're right to say, 100,000 people in there, lots of thousands of people outside as well. Was a phenomenal day. But Reece, we never felt as if we were the underdogs.
I think it's my because obviously with Coventry where they are, I think it's just my mentality of the way I was looking at it. But it's baffling to me these days, like Coventry winning the FA Cup, and I think it was the only time Coventry. I could be wrong. Like I said, I always try to speak it off the top of my head sometimes with a bit of notes. But it's the only time that Coventry probably won the cup for so long. But just mentioning about Coventry City now, how do you feel what's going on with them? Because, they're in and out of their home ground. Next, they're in Northampton. Then next, they're in Birmingham. And then they're back in the Ricoh Arena. And then they're not. Every time you hear about that, do you just feel that, Coventry just the fans don't deserve that either. So what?
No, absolutely right. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. We had Highfield Road, which held 24,000. And even back in those days, invariably they never used to get filled. So why they wanted to move from Highfield Road, I don't know. Maybe they saw that as being like the big stadium, the Ricoh Arena. But Highfield Road, was getting developed, had been developed to a certain degree. Yes, they could have done the main stand. But obviously the area that it was in, it was very tight to get in and out, very similar to West Ham, for example, the bowling ground, or Upton Park as people used to know it. The coach driver could never go in front ways because he'd never be able to get out back ways, so we always had to reverse. So by the time you got to the bowling ground, it used to take 10 minutes for the coach driver to actually get into the ground. So there used to be issues at Coventry City, so they decided obviously to build this new Fandangle Stadium, and it is a beautiful stadium. I've been there several times, not only to watch Coventry City, but to watch Take That or Bruce Springsteen or Oasis or whatever, and that's really the only times, truth be told, that the stadium's been full, when there's been concerts there. Very rare they ever put 34,000 people in there, but it's a wonderful stadium. And then you've got the issues, with Wasps, the council, the Alan Higgs Trust, CSU, and when you've got several pieces, in the same, or like conflicting companies going against each other, you're not going to have a happy marriage. And it ended up with Coventry moving down to Sixfields in Northampton, which was great. I used to go and watch my son Aaron. He was at Coventry at the time, play down there. But to travel down to Northampton, it'd be very similar to. It never really happened with Wimbledon when MK Dons moved up to Milton Keynes. Not many Wimbledon fans went up there. I don't think any Wimbledon fans went up there because all of a sudden, it was a different club. The only thing with Coventry, it kept its name, and that was the difference. And I'm pleased to see that Wimbledon now we're back at is it Plough Lane where they're back at. So I'm pleased for that for Wimbledon fans, but with Coventry fans, then obviously coming back to the Rico, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're off to Birmingham City. There were talks that they were going to have links up with Nuneaton Town, but that only held about 5,000. They were on about building a new stadium at the Coventry Speedway track. That never developed, and that's now going into housing. And there's been a lot of money spent on litigation, etc. Through the council, CISU, etc. If they had just got themselves together, obviously the situation with Wasps as well. I don't have an issue with Wasps at all, to be honest with you. Having said that, Coventry Rugby Club, that's bigger and better than what it's ever been at this moment in time. But Wasps are a Premiership side. The crowds they're getting not as big as what they used to have. And only really it makes sense. Coventry need to be back in Coventry. I will say that Birmingham City have been absolutely phenomenal. They've been fantastic to host Coventry City, going from the Division 1 into the Championship. And at this moment in time, Coventry are now going to be fighting a relegation battle. A huge game coming up very, very shortly. I know this will go out after the game, but they're playing Rotherham on Thursday night. And they've got 6-7 games left, and who knows? But really, they want to be going back to the Rico, still in the Championship.
I'm going to mention Norwich City for a minute, and maybe Nottingham Forest, because those teams were in the Premier League as well. So, and people seem to forget that Coventry had a brief spell in the Premier League. So, do you know? Did you ever play against Coventry in the Premier League? And if so, what was the reception like for you when you went to go and play against them? Was the reception? Did the fans still hold I was going to say grudge. It's not a grudge, to say, do they still praise you? Go, David, fair play.
Yeah, a lot of respect. I'll be honest with you now, Reece, that every club I've gone back to, I've always had a warm response because I feel that I've given them a lot of my time, a lot of good times, and as you're right to say, it just seems that when I've been to certain clubs, things have happened. The only real one I would turn around and say it didn't happen was Lincoln, but that was right at the back end of my career. I wasn't overly phased, to be honest with you, with that, because within 10 minutes of being at Sinsel Bank, I found that the chairman had lied to me, and again that put my back up. But everywhere else that I've been, and I do a lot of commentary work, etc. I was up at the old McAlpine Stadium. And there's still a lot of people out there, can I have your autograph? Can I do this? Can I have pictures and whatever? And so when I've been to places and I've played, I've always had a huge response, because as I said, things are materialised, whether we got into the Premier League, whether we won cups, whether we won trophies, whether we finished third in the Premier League as we did with Norwich, and also with Nottingham Forest. There's been a lot of respect there. So, and of course, I respect them back as well, because I've got a lot of time for fans all over the place where I've played.
And going on to Norwich City, from 1989 to 1993, I think Norwich City. It says I put down in my notes 1989 plus 1992 when it comes to the FA Cup semi-finals, and then it's third in the Premier League. But I really want to mention the finishing third in the Premier League in the very first Premiership season. I think Aston Villa finished second, and Manchester United obviously became the champions, and that's it started that glory Man United in the Premier League. But I was told, and when I did my research as well, looking at other football YouTube videos and everything, Norwich were really close to winning that Premier League title. I could be wrong, I could be not, but everyone kept saying you guys were really close to securing the title. So how big was it that season, considering that it was the introduction to the Premier League? So the old first division was no more. It was just going into what today people know as the Championship. So what was it like to be playing in the first season of the Premier League, and especially fighting to be one of the top teams to be fighting for the title in that very first season?
Yeah, I would say, that year, Sky had the rights to show all these games, and you had the razzmatazz, you had the girls, as you came out, like all the cheerleaders, you had the balloons, you had the fireworks, and it was a new conception of what football was going to be all about. That season for us, was an unbelievable season, but we had a blip around Christmas time where, unfortunately, we lost to our near and dear neighbours, Ipswich Town, which wasn't great. We also lost to Manchester United during that Christmas period, and we at one stage I think we were 7 or 9 points clear. We again were a group of players, and when you look at them, you had Brian Gunn in goal, Mark Bowen, who was a Welsh teammate of mine, he played behind me. I played as a left midfielder back in those days. Ian Crook, Andy Townsend, with Robert Fleck, gosh, blimey, Dale Gordon, Rolf Fox. We had some real good players back in those days, and we knew how to work with each other. Dave Stringer, Dave Williams, who was the a lot of respect for him. Again, a Welsh international, he was the coach. And we had a real good setup. We knew how to play. We had a style of play that sometimes we would, suck the opposition in, then go and hit them on the counter, because we had good pace, not only with myself but Rolf Fox, Dale Gordon, Robert Fleck, and we scored some real good goals. And that year I scored some real good goals as well. You might see some, at Selhurst Park where I had that scissor kick. I seem to score a reasonable amount about with Chelsea as well. With Dave Besant, and going through my years, I've scored more goals against Dave Besant than I've scored about any other goalkeeper. But everything that was surrounding that year was an unbelievable year. But for us to finish in 3rd place and then gain access to Europe, was a fabulous tribute to Norwich City. But that was my 4th year. The contract negotiations that we had never came to fruition, and it was again a time where to move on. The PFA had been in touch with me regarding Nottingham Forest, the first team who were going over to America. Mike Walker, who'd taken over, said I wasn't going to be going to America. Can you stay with the kids and train with the kids? And I said, yeah, I'll stay with the kids, and I'll help the kids. And he came back and he said, look, you're a credit to your profession. I've heard really good things about you. What are you going to be doing? I said, I'm leaving. And so, again, it went to a tribunal. I went to Norwich City under a tribunal from Coventry. This again was another tribunal. And then so after 4 years at Norwich, the last one being a real good one in the Premier League, finishing 3rd, getting into Europe. And I was thinking, well, is this the time that, I'm never going to experience European football apart from international football? But, as we can go on to Nottingham Forest, again, we finished 3rd in the Premier League after getting promoted. And then, I got into Europe and we got through to the quarterfinals where we lost to Bayern Munich.
With Nottingham Forest, because it was 1993, so this was around about the time that Brian Clough had retired, and Nottingham Forest had lost a hero, someone who actually put Nottingham Forest, not just the club, but maybe the city on the map, and because of what he did for the community, so there was a big gap to fill. And I think Frank Clark, the guy who had to take over, but he was, one of the players that played for Brian Clough to win the as people may call it, the Champions League. But
European Cup.
Yeah, and so when you went in, when you signed for Nottingham Forest, what was the atmosphere like and the environment? Because like I said, with Brian Clough not there, it's going to be eerie in some ways. I know you signed for him, so you're not going to know with Brian Clough's presence or anything like that. But I mean, what was it like just to go in there in the very first season with no Brian Clough and with Frank Clark at the helm?
Yeah, I'm saying, to be honest, I didn't really think too much about that situation regarding Brian Clough. The players who were there were virtually under Brian anyway. Also, you've got to take into account that Roy Keane left, and he went to Manchester United, and I was brought in to come and replace him. Yeah. It seemed very, very strange that I played virtually 4 years as a wide left for Norwich, and Frank Clark saw me as a central midfielder. And I had played there on several occasions. Obviously the 2 years at Manchester City, and that's where you really remembered me from. But, I had that versatility, I could play anywhere. And, when I came into Nottingham Forest, again, you had big players there. You've got your Stuart Pearces, for example. Stan Collymore had signed for just over 2 million from Southend. And there were real good players in there. The Ian Wones, the Steve Stone, Steve Chettle, Colin Cooper. Good players. And coming into the change room, it was a little bit down to start off with. And when I signed there, Frank said, look, just bide your time. He said, look, we need to give these boys a little bit of a run. And so I missed the first few games. And I was just sitting on the sidelines thinking, am I ever going to start here?
Yeah.
But I had a lot of trust and faith in Frank. And again, there's a lot of managers throughout the whole of my career, I've got a lot of respect for. And he is another one. He's another one that I could put around the dinner table and I'd have no issues about talking to him for hours upon end. A real nice guy, great character, great motivator. Didn't do a lot of coaching. Liam O'Kane did most of that. But, it's the same with Cloughie. Cloughie didn't do a lot of training either.
A
lot of
management kind of thing, was it?
Yeah, man management. He'd come along and, supersede, what was happening with five-a-sides. And that's where Frank, continued, the good work that Cloughie had instilled into the club. A lot of five-a-sides, seven-a-sides, etc. And again, first year, got promoted.
Yeah. Was it still simplicity with Frank Clark? Because I know Brian Clough was like that. It was simplicity. You're the striker, you score the goals, you're the goalkeeper, stop the ball from going in the back of the net or something. So did Frank Clark keep that simplicity going, or did he add his own idea?
Yeah, in a day, what you have to do, you have to take a piece of this, you have to take a piece of that, and then try and marry them together and to see if you can get this, magical formula. And as it materialised, it was a magical formula. As I said, Stan Collymore came in, scored shed loads of goals. It got a little bit naughty towards the end where thinking, well, are we going to get promoted or not? I still remember going down to Millwall, down to the Den, the old Den, that is. The new one looks, quite nice. The old one was intimidating. And I still remember that Stan had scored a couple of goals against Millwall and was riling up their fans. And I'm thinking, well, okay, fine. And then I still remember somebody put the ball in behind the left back. And for some reason, I made a diagonal run and I got in behind the left back. And as I'm running past the left back, the linesman's running the opposite way. And I'm thinking, why is the linesman running the opposite way? And as I turned around, the referee and half the players were in the tunnel. And of course, because Stan had been riling them up, the referee blew the whistle. The next thing, getting invaded by all Millwall fans. But thankfully, I managed to get off. But thanks, referee, for letting me know. Instead of me chasing the ball into the corner, you could have let me know. But I did sense something when I saw the linesman running the opposite way. I thought something isn't quite right here. I need to get off the pitch. But those were great days. As I said, we got promoted that year. I ended up becoming Player of the Year as well. And what more can I say?
Do you know what I want to talk to you about? Because there are Stan Collymore, a bit of a character, and I want to know the goalkeeper, Mark Crossley. Character. I was watching Under the Cosh. I cannot help it. Every time I really want him to come on my show because he's played for Wales, being the international goalkeeper. And I love him to even if it's just I don't even want to talk about Brian Clough then, because I know he gets asked a lot to do impersonations of him and that, but I cannot help but watch Under the Cosh and just be entertained by him. He's such a good entertainer. Have you got like a story to tell about Mark Crossley? Saying he's a big
no, not really. End of the day, as you like to say, he was a great impersonator. He was Big Norm. But there were a lot of characters back in those days, and even towards the back end, Dean Saunders came in. And again, he's another one who can take people off. He used to take Dave Bassett off when he became manager for a short period of time. But there were a lot of good characters in there, and I do hope that you're able to get hold of Mark Crossley and get him onto your show. He does a lot for Walking is Brilliant. I'm sure that you follow Mark and on Twitter, etc. He does a lot regarding mental health. Again, a great character. I bumped into him down at the Sky Studios not that long ago, and it was like, arms around it. I know we were like, supposed to be socially distanced, but we weren't. Again, those days, a lot of respect. We do have a game coming up in June at Basford Football Club, where there's a lot of the former Nottingham Forest players playing. I won't mention what's happening with the charity because I don't know if it's out there at this moment in time, but we will be at Basford in June. So it'll be really nice to go and meet up with some of those players. Ian Wone is another great character. I do see him on the circuit when I go and commentate up at Turf Moor. Sean Dyche as well is another one. He was a youngster when I was at Nottingham Forest. Never thought that he'd become a manager, but he's done such a phenomenal job. I believe that Brian Roy is coming over from Ajax. And it'd be good to see him as well. There's a lot of players out there. Stuart Pearce. What a character he is. Unbelievable player. Skip, as we used to call him. He was a phenomenal guy.
Last question on Nottingham Forest, and then I got just a couple of last questions. And I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, David. It really means a lot, and especially the 50th episode as well. I really wanted a big 50th.
Do I get a golden cap for that?
Oh yeah, yes, please. If you got one.
I've got one here. It's down there.
So Nottingham Forest, it was when Frank Clark departed. Nottingham Forest got relegated, and Stuart Pearce took over, and I forgot in my notes.
Nigel Clough came in as well.
Oh, Nigel Clough came in as well. So it was a bit of a juggle with loads of managers then. So in the last season, Nottingham Forest with relegation and Clark leaving, then Pearce and Nigel Clough taking over, and then afterwards, what was going on around that time? Was it just did something not click? Was there a lot of effect going on with other players? What just went wrong, really?
Yeah, I'm saying there were a lot of factors that went on with that. At the end of the day, I left in February to go down to Huddersfield. Stan Collymore, all those situations. He was desperate to move away. And there were players, very, very unhappy about everything that was happening at the moment in time. It's just one of those things that, you have your bad season, and it's just how you're going to try and rectify it. But obviously with Frank leaving, was a huge impact on the players. I left in February. I had some off-field issues which I needed to resolve myself as well. So there were a lot of things happening, back in those days. But people do turn around and say, that 4 years I was at Nottingham Forest, they were the best Nottingham Forest side from then to nowadays. Obviously, we can look at 81, like with the European Cup final, etc. Those were the players. But Nottingham Forest fans still say to this day that the side that I played in back in those days was the best Forest side, and they've not been able to replicate that. I hope they do one day. They got Chris Hughton as manager. Again, another player who I respect, not only as a person but also as a manager as well. I know him off the field, and I hope he does really well. Because they deserve it.
Going on to a very quick question about Wales. I really want to mention your last days of playing for Wales. Especially under Terry Off, where you were part of the team that beat Germany when Germany and part of beating Brazil, and also obviously got the Romania game and everything. But two questions. So which Wales game stands out for you? And also, could you tell us about your last game, which I believe was against Italy? It was a 3-0 loss, but could you tell us about that as well?
Yeah, I'm saying the biggest game for me was obviously making my debut against England back in 1984. That was just an unbelievable occasion for me. I was only 20 years of age, and to play against England back in those days was just a dream come true. So that's one I always remember. You mentioned 1994 when we played Germany. I've still got the shirt to my right hand side. I never swapped that one. You'll see that I've on my shoulder there, I've got my Wales youth shirt. That was from 1980. Either side of that, I've got Klinsmann, I've got Bremer. Playing against Germany was always a great occasion. Huge players that we used to play against, not only those two, but Alof's, Lothar Matthäus, unbelievable player. But they had some Rudi Voller, they had some great players back in those days. And to beat them 1-0, as we did, going up to Scotland and, beating them 1-0 with Rushy scoring was another memorable occasion for myself. Romania was not a great one, but, we came close on that time, but it still started off very, very poorly because we went to Bucharest and we lost 5-1 there. We were 5-0 down, I think, at half time. Hadji was unbelievable back in those days, but, and then coming so close and losing at the end. But yeah, the last game was at Turney. It was a very strange one, really, because the game before that was against Albania. And Bobby Gould had spoken to me and phoned me up and said, look, David, you can be in the squad if you want to. Yeah, this is right. You can be in the squad if you want to. We're traveling to Albania. Maybe you don't want to go. And I thought, hold on again. We're playing mind games here. I know Bobby from old, and I will be honest, he's not a great favourite of mine. And there are other issues. We could have gone down, another line, about Moldova and places like that, where Bobby was in charge. But that's maybe for another day. And he said, well, maybe you don't want to go to Albania. I said, yeah, of course I want to go, Bobby. Why would I not want to go to Albania? Who doesn't want to go to Albania? Norman Wisdom was an absolute legend there. Maybe you don't know Norman Wisdom, but, great comedian. Yeah, he was a legend in Albania. And I thought, right, I'm going to Tirana. So as it materialised, he again spoke to me. He said, well, by the way, you won't be starting, but you'll be in the squad. I said, yeah, that's fine for me, Bob. Yeah, not a problem. I'll come along for the journey. So we met at Waltham Abbey, and by this time, Gary Speed had pulled out. Somebody else had pulled out, and he said, can I have a word with you? I've gone, yeah, why not? So he pulled me, and he's gone, how do you fancy being captain? So there am I, him not even wanting me to be in the squad, to telling me I'm not even starting, to now making me captain. Strange.
Logic.
What can I say? So we went to Tirana and we drew 1 each. And then the next game was to be played against Italy in a small destination called Turney. And to be honest with you, Reece, the game should never have been played. If you'd have put some yachts on there or speedboats, it was so wet, it was frightening. The Italians were just flicking the ball up and volleying it all over the place. I played as a front sweeper that day. We got beat 3-0. And, he wasn't very happy. He had a pop at me, he had a pop at Rushy, he had a pop at a few other players. But I still remember after the game, we were on our coach waiting to get out the stadium. And apparently what he'd done, he'd organised a local restaurant to serve Italian food, obviously, before we made our way back to Rome. But we couldn't get to the restaurant because there was a car in the way. So somebody turned around and said, oh, I know whose car that is. So Bobby's gone, well, who is it? Who's it? I'll go and sort it out. He said, it's Ravanelli's. So he's gone, right, okay. So what he's done, he's come off our coach. He's gone on to the Italian coach. He's gone, excuse me, Mr. Ravanelli, could you move your car, please? We need to get to the restaurant. And like Ravanelli looked at him and like as if to say, who the hell are you? It wasn't his car. One of our boys had taken the mick out of Bobby Gould. So it was like, we were absolutely in stitches. I don't think Bobby was particularly too happy. And so, we went to the restaurant. And after that, one fitting line that I do have, Reece, is that I made my debut with a legend and I retired with a legend. I made my debut with Mark Hughes back in 1984. And in 1996, I retired with Ian Rush. So that was Rushy's last game as well. So, for me, I had 12 good years as a Welsh international, some ups and downs, a lot of fond memories, and some things that I'll never forget.
I was going to say the last question I have for you, it was always a cliche for me in this podcast, is how do you look back on your career? But I think you just completely answered that for me.
Yeah. It was a great time. It's not just 1984 to 1996. It all developed from 1980 onwards. When I became a Welsh youth international, I still remember going into the manager's office at Plymouth Argyle because I was having a good season at the time. And he's turned around to me and said, "David, I've got some fantastic news for you." He's gone, "England want to call you up for the under-18s." And he looked at me and I just said, "I'm not interested." He said, "What do you mean you're not interested?" I said, "Because I'm not English, I'm Welsh. I might have been born in West Germany. I might have lived in Holland or whatever. I was brought up to be Welsh. I lived in Bridgend. I went to Llangowyr School. My teacher was Mr. Williams, who was Plaid Cymru, and his Bord Dar Plant, Bord Dar Hi, who was like, no, so everything was all Welsh. We were brought up to not play football, but to play rugby. I would support whoever England was playing. That was the way I was brought up. I was always Welsh through and through as far as I'm concerned, and it's always stayed the same, even now, Wales rugby, Wales, football, I'm very passionate about, anything that was to do with Welsh sport, and that will never die.
Well, David, thank you so much for coming on the Dragons Voice podcast and talking about your career. I really had fun talking about it, and I wish you all the very best with your coaching and everything. And hopefully I see you one day down at a Wales game, hopefully one day, and I'll buy you a pint.
Oh, just the one then, Reese.
No, there'll be a few.
I'll stay overnight then.
Anyway, thank you guys for watching and listening to the Dragons Voice podcast. Make sure you give a like, share, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you follow us on Podbean as well. And also thank you to our sponsors, Spackle Sportswear, for supporting us all the way through this channel and also through this time. So make sure I'll leave a link below where you can find out where you can get your goods, your tracksuits, your jumpers and everything, all on Spackle Sportswear. They'll be on the link below. But guys, for now, thank you so much for tuning in to the Dragons Voice podcast. I've been your host, Truly Reese Deans, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Hey guys, this podcast is brought to you by Spackle Sportswear. Spackle Sportswear is a local business based in Barry, and they produce the sportswear and training gear that you may need. Their stocks include tracksuits, hoodies, t-shirts, socks, and so much more. If you're a local team or even a local football club that wants to provide the best kit for their team to play in, then Spackle Sportswear is the business to turn to. Even if you're not into football, but are into other sports, Spackle Sportswear also provides you with the best gear when you go to the boxing gyms or even play rugby, tennis, and so much more. They don't just do training gear or any outfits at all, and if you're just looking for something to wear in general, then they also provide the leisure outfits as well. So if you're interested and want to inquire, then get in contact via social media. If you want to look them up on Facebook, just type in Spackle Sportswear. On Twitter, it's at Spackle Sportswear, no capitals and no gaps at all. Or even on Instagram, same again, Spackle Sportswear with no gaps. Or even then, if you want to send them an email, it's at spacklesportswear@gmail.com. They won't disappoint you, so get in touch. Spackle Sportswear on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or you can email again on spacklesportswear@gmail.com.